It was night in London, and Buckingham Palace seemed quieter than ever before. Behind its centuries-old walls, guarded by motionless soldiers, rested secrets that had never been revealed to the world. But what if some of those secrets were far too ancient to belong solely to the British monarchy? What if they traced back to ages when kings were not entirely human and thrones did not belong to just one species? From the most remote times, stories of reptilian beings, hybrid creatures, half human and half reptile, echo through the traditions of different peoples. In Sumerian mythology, figures such as Enki, the serpent god, guarded forbidden knowledge. In Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Aztec and the Maya, gods like Quetzalcoatl took the form of the feathered serpent, symbols of power and wisdom. These records, far older than the rise of any European monarchy, raise an unsettling question. Were they merely myths or clues left by a bloodline that has endured through the centuries? The writer and lecturer David Icke, in his book The Biggest Secret, first published in 1999, dared to claim that members of the British royal family, including Queen Elizabeth II, were part of an ancient order connected to these beings. According to him, royal bloodlines preserve a DNA not entirely human, the result of pacts made millennia ago. To many, this sounds like pure conspiratorial fantasy. To others, it is the key to understanding patterns that repeat themselves throughout history, from political manipulation to cultural control. But the question does not end with a modern theory. Ronald H. Fritzie, in Hope and Fear, published in 2018, analyzed how beliefs and myths persist for centuries precisely because they carry elements that resonate deeply with the collective unconscious. And perhaps it is this resonance that keeps alive the notion that the British monarchy maintains a hidden connection with something not human. If all of this were true, why keep such secrets? Perhaps because the revelation would change not only the way we see the royal family, but the very notion of humanity itself. Imagine the global impact if tomorrow documents and records revealed that the most iconic figure of modern royalty belonged to a dynasty that transcends the human species. Among the whispers of ancient servants and rumors smothered by the crown, strange reports emerge. Symbols discreetly carved into private chambers, rituals closed to all outside eyes, and meetings with figures whose power cannot be measured solely by noble titles. Are these merely aristocratic traditions, or traces of a far older and far more dangerous alliance? And beneath it all remains the question that no one dares to speak aloud. If these beings have been among us since before the pyramids, how much longer will they allow us to go on believing that we are in control? Thus, the story you are about to hear is not merely about a queen. It is about a silent legacy, an invisible network of power, and an ancestral pact whose consequences may soon come to light. Now, are you ready to move forward?
The narrative continues and brings forth a second act, symbols and whispers that seem to emerge from the shadows of a history far older than one might imagine. The British monarchy, the focus of global adoration, may have hidden something far deeper than jewels and traditions. What if the true power was written not upon parchment, but in symbols that only a few have dared to decipher? Within the private chambers of Buckingham Palace, and in the cold corridors where only servants walk, ancient accounts speak of strange symbols carved discreetly, interwoven serpents, hidden eyes, patterns that resemble constellations. Such markings awaken ancestral memories, much like those described by David Icke in The Biggest Secret, first published in 1999, in which the symbols of the royal bloodline are said to be connected to an ancestral reptilian brotherhood that manipulates the world from behind the throne. Ike, according to his writings, gathered testimonies from people who claimed to have seen powerful figures, men and women cloaked in titles, change shape before their eyes, revealing scales where only moments before there had been skin. He suggests that this bloodline not only possesses secret symbols, but manipulates aristocratic bloodlines, preserving a genetic heritage that is not entirely human. Yet, the development of this tale does not rest solely upon a single author. The roots of these myths, recorded in stories long before the 20th century, are as old as the very fabric of occult fiction itself. The idea of serpent-like humanoids who disguise themselves among us appeared in 1929 within the pages of Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan, and was inspired by the theosophical doctrines of Helena Blavatsky, who spoke of dragon people in lost continents such as Lemuria or Atlantis. Now, the listener is left to wonder, if such symbols exist and endure, why have they remained hidden for so long? Perhaps because their meaning could shatter the perception of the monarchy as the supreme guardian of human order. If these signs belong to the ancient order, then perhaps this royal alliance is a key to understanding how power has been silently maintained through the centuries. Meanwhile, the conflict begins to take shape. A public face of majesty and tradition, and behind it, a network of ancestral symbols and secret codes. The mystery deepens, and curiosity swells, an almost latent affliction that asks, could it be that all we have taken as real is merely the surface of a scaly and terrifyingly ancient truth?
Time, for an order that has endured for millennia, is merely another piece on the board. And if the theory is correct, the British royal family rules not only by inheritance or politics, it rules because it is the guardian of a plan that stretches far beyond the span of any human reign. But every plan requires a decisive point, a catalyst. In restricted circles, whispers claim that this catalyst is not simply a political or social event, but a calculated trigger capable of altering the very structure of civilization itself. David Icke describes in Children of the Matrix, first published in 2001, that these reptilian beings, or invisible architects, operate through global crises to prepare humanity for the next phase of dominion. And what could that phase be? A silent transition in which governments and cultures give way to a unified order, seemingly human, yet shaped by hands we do not know. There are those who say that signs of this catalyst have already begun to appear. The growing presence of reptilian symbols in fashion, in music, and even in official events, subtle speeches that speak of a new age or a great reset, and quiet changes to the security protocols of central institutions in the United Kingdom. All of this could be mere coincidence or part of a carefully scripted plot. The anthropologist Michael Barkin, in A Culture of Conspiracy, first published in 2013, points out that theories such as this endure because they unite scattered elements, ancient myths, modern symbols, and real events into a coherent narrative for those who look beyond the surface. And that coherence, for many, is what lends weight to the suspicion that the catalyst will not be a chaotic event, but rather a calculated act of partial revelation, just enough to reconfigure public trust, but not enough to expose the whole truth. Imagine an official declaration announcing the discovery of non-human life forms quietly living on Earth, a revelation that would rewrite history books and send collective shockwaves around the globe. But what if, behind this revelation, there were only a controlled version of the truth, crafted to serve the interests of the same bloodline that has guarded the secrets for centuries? The tension builds because if the catalyst is real, it is not merely inevitable, it is already in motion. Every public gesture, every calculated speech, every carefully released image from the monarchy may be a piece of this puzzle. The listener is left with a question that refuses to fade. Are we witnessing mere coincidences, or living through the opening chapters of a plan conceived before we even understood the concept of power? And as this doubt consumes the most watchful among us, another question rises like a shadow upon the horizon. When the catalyst comes, will it be too late to understand the game? The wind blows cold over the gates of Buckingham Palace. The city sleeps, yet within, beneath the flawless silence of royalty, something remains awake. There is the sense that at any moment, a curtain could rise, revealing a stage that had been set long before we were born. Could this so-called royal alliance be the greatest cover-up in modern history? From the Sumerian civilizations to the colonial empires, power has always hidden behind symbols and carefully controlled narratives. What is different now is that if the reptilian theory is true, we are not facing an ordinary conspiracy, but rather a pact between species, a symbiosis of interests that defies the very notion of human sovereignty. Historians Lynn Picknett and Clive Prince, in their book The Stargate Conspiracy, first published in 1999, examine how global elites manipulate ancient myths and beliefs to preserve order and control public perception. In this context, the British monarchy would not be merely a political power, but the human face of a much older alliance, whose roots vanish into the mists of time. If these beings have been here for centuries, perhaps it is not through brute domination, but through patience, an almost infinite patience, allowing them to shape empires, manipulate economies, influence religions, until humanity itself willingly accepts their presence. This is the true subtlety of power, not to impose by force, but to guide silently until the very victim asks for their leadership. And in the face of this perspective, the final and most disturbing question emerges. How much longer will they allow us to believe that we are in control? If the catalyst does indeed occur, whether as a partial revelation, a manufactured crisis, or a staged contact, the line between truth and manipulation may become impossible to distinguish. Imagine waking up in a world where global leaders on national broadcast announce that they have always been here, that peace and order depend upon cooperation between species, and that resistance would mean the collapse of civilization. How many would accept? How many would doubt? And how many, even in doubt, would have the courage to act? Perhaps this is the real game, not to hide forever, but to reveal at the precise moment when resistance is no longer possible. A silent checkmate played by cold and ancient hands. And so the story closes, but it does not end. For if these secrets have survived wars, revolutions, and the very rise of modernity itself, who can say with certainty that they will not survive the future as well? And you, do you truly believe you know the story behind the crown? If this investigation has awakened something within you, subscribe now to the channel. There is still far more to be revealed, and believe me, the next pieces of this puzzle may be closer than you imagine. After all, when the truth finally surfaces, will you be ready to see it?